Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to talk about how important it is to achieve dreams. Depending on how big or how small that dream is, the important part is that we actually engage in the process, take a step in the direction that fulfills us when it comes to trying to figure out and accomplish what that dream is. It also imagines that how much hard work and dedication we put into it to feel what the outcome it is once we have that dream in hand. On the Beyond 50 radio program today, we're going to be talking about the book, The Late Starter's Orchestra. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a former journalist with the New York Times. He's also author of 3 previous books, including the bestseller, The Search for God at Harvard. He also teaches at Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Harry Goldman. Harry, how are you today?
Very good. Hi, Daniel. Nice to be with you.
Now, tell us how this all started for you. About what age was it before you decided you were going to take up the cello?
Well, the book focuses on my approaching my 60th birthday and saying, I've flirted with the cello my whole life, and I want to get good enough to play it in public. I had started in my 20s. Sadly, I didn't play as in elementary school or high school. I took it up later, took it up in my 20s and played for several years. Then had to give it up when I got married and had children and got an important job and worked in journalism. I was a reporter for the New York Times. And then with the years, my kids grew up. They began to go off on their own, and I decided to give the cello another round in my life and try it one more time. And my goal, and the book is really centered around the year that I turned 60 and having my coming out performance at my 60th birthday to play for family and friends. Family and friends who thought of me as one way. They thought of me as a writer and as a professor. And suddenly I'm coming out with this big instrument and saying, I do something else, and I want you to know about it, and I want to share that aspect of who I am.
Now, you think about all the instruments that somebody could pick out there. What made you decide to pick the cello of all things?
Well, I love the sound. I've loved the sound ever since I was a child, and I would hear an orchestra. I would always watch the cellists and relate most to that sound. I think one of the reasons was the cello has the sound of a male voice. It's the instrument that most approximates the male voice. There might be other orchestral instruments that do that, but for me, it was the voice of my childhood. It was the voice of the cantor in the synagogue. And I loved the music of the synagogue, and I'm to love Jewish music. And I heard it move from the synagogue to the concert stage. And when I discovered that Max Bruch had written a Kol Nidre, that's the central prayer said on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, I thought, wow, this tradition that I know, this synagogue music, comes alive on the concert stage. And it's something that I pursued and enjoyed as a listener until I was in my 20s, and quite by accident, I knocked on the door of a little studio looking for an appointment, looking for someone else, and this elderly man comes to the door. He had been asleep, it seemed, but he came to the door rubbing his eyes, and I saw the light from the hallway cast light on on a beautiful cello case behind him. And I said, I'm sorry to disturb you, but do you play the cello? And he said, yes, I give lessons. Do you want to become one of my students? And I had never really thought about playing it. I always enjoyed the sound. And when he said that, I spontaneously said yes. And I studied with this man for the next 7 years. And I became an adult amateur. Starting in your 20s is already a late starter because in order to be really good at an instrument, you've got to start when you're very young. There's a great violinist, Alexander Schneider, said, to be great on a string instrument, you have to start at 5. Later is too late. And you go to the great cellists, to Casals or Piatigorsky or Yo-Yo Ma. They started at 5 or 4 or 3. To start in your 20s is late. So I was sort of a double late starter. I started in my 20s and then put it away for a long period in my life, and then took it out in my 50s again. And this teacher who I studied with in my 20s was a very powerful influence on me. And he's a character in the book who, even after he passes away, continues to remind me of some of the important lessons of music and keeps pushing me back to the cello and keeps inspiring me. So on the one hand, I have almost this ghost of an old man telling me to do it. And then I have a young son who is taking up the cello. And I became his soccer dad. Like in soccer, you've got a mom devoted to playing of the sport. Well, I was his cello dad. I took my son to the lessons and worked with him and studied with him. And then at a certain point, he said, "Dad, how come you're not playing?" So between the memory of my old teacher and the encouragement of my young son, I began to play the instrument again. And with this goal of playing for my 60th birthday in public and playing a piece by Bach that was very challenging to me, and another piece of Jewish music that meant a lot to me. And along the way of that journey, I found an adult orchestra called the Late Starters Orchestra that was very accepting of me and of my abilities, and had people who also came to music late in life. And we get together every Sunday and we encourage each other and play and share the joy of music. Now it's not the Philharmonic and it's not the great artistry, but it's beautiful, and it's fun to do and fun to share and fun to play for audiences. And I find that audiences are very sort of forgiving of amateur players. They know they're not at the Philharmonic. They know they're not paying $100 for the seats. We do free concerts in the park. We do concerts in churches and in synagogues, and people really appreciate it.
It's interesting that you say something like how the audience can be forgiving, that you aren't the Philharmonic and the like, but you take a look at, for instance, karaoke. Mm-hmm. People are extremely forgiving, and sometimes you can go out there and you can hear some really bad karaoke. But the fact is that we experience someone who has the audacity to stand up in front of others, regardless of how they sound, and take a shot. And that's what this is all about, is the idea that you're actually taking a shot. You're actually getting up there and you're going after something that, for you, has a lot of meaning. And I think that's mm-hmm. what a lot of people identify with when they experience, for instance, seeing a performance with the Late Starters Orchestra.
There's a lot of truth to that. It is sometimes it's a raw experience. Sometimes it's it's not totally perfect. What we do often is, if we make a mistake, our conductor will say, "All right, let's take that again," and the audience understands. You might have to listen to one part of it again, but you can sort of see the growth and you see the improvement. As it turns out, my wife loves karaoke. She can't pass the karaoke bar without going in and belting out a song, and I enjoy listening to her. And I appreciate her, her courage to do that. And she appreciates my my efforts on the cello, even though the music is very different.
Now, your teacher that you were describing earlier was somebody who was really consistent about practice, that you can never practice enough. Tell us about that.
Yeah. He liked to say that practice makes the impossible possible. That you're working on a passage and you say, that's just too fast, that's just too, the rhythm, the notes, I just can't do that. And he would say, practice it, and break it down into its component pieces. There's a great line about practice that, if you practice fast, you'll forget it fast. If you practice slowly, you'll forget it slowly. So it stays more if you just start slow and make it your own. Related to that is just the idea of not neglecting your instrument. One of the pieces of advice that I give in the book and that I picked up over time is never pack away your instrument. It should always be there for you just to pick up on inspiration. If you put it in a case and put it in the closet, it's going to be all that harder to retrieve. I have a friend who says, every time I pass my piano, I feel guilty. And that's good. You should feel a little guilty. You should be, it's like calling out to you, saying, play me, play me. Now, it's hard to pack away a piano. That's a piece of furniture. But to pack away your clarinet or your trumpet or your cello or your violin is kind of easy. But I like to keep them out. It reminds me that it needs my attention. And that's some of the other advice and wisdom that my teacher imparted on me.
Now, the other thing, too, as I was reading the book, The Late Starters Orchestra, is I was reminded of the documentary Young at Heart, and I don't know, are you familiar with that, where you have a group, late starters, that go out and they perform covers, and one of the most poignant moments of the movie for me, and it actually brought a tear to my eye, was when the lady was at the prison, and she was singing Joan Baez, Forever Young. And you realize here are these young men incarcerated, and you wonder, you could just almost see it in their eyes like, geez, I kind of threw my life away. What am I going to be like when I'm that age? And I'm going to be able to do something about what it is that I want to do. I've made some choices that put me here, but what's next? Kind of a thing. And you realize there are so many of us that get caught up in just the day-to-day living that pretty soon we find ourselves, as you were approaching your 60th birthday, and I believe it was the case of Eve, she was in her 70s, and you realize, is it too late? And we live in a society that quite often says, that almost has this chronological clock that if we're not obeying what is told to us by this clock, somehow we've missed the boat, we failed, and it's too late. And that's what's exciting about reading something like this, is that you do exactly what our show has been attempting to do for 10 years, is to say, look, each day you're breathing in and out, if you can take a step forward, if you have, the brass to go after whatever that is inside of you that you feel needs to be fulfilled, now's the time to do it, and don't make excuses one way or the other.
That's the message of my book. To hold on to those dreams and to seize those moments. Medical science has added 25, 30 years to our lifespan. In the last century. A century ago, people were living till 50. Now we're living till 80, 85, 90. And it's really us to design those years and to make the most of them. One of my inspirations is Diana Nyad. who did that great swim from Cuba to Florida, first person to swim that distance, and she did it on her fourth try, and she did it at 64 years old. And I think that's an inspiration for all of us boomers. And when she got out of the water, she said, "I have three things to say." She said, "Never, ever give up. You are never too old to pursue your dreams. And three, it looks like a solitary sport, but it takes a team." And I use that quote in the beginning of the Late Starters Orchestra because while it's about swimming, it's also about music. You should never give up if you have the dream of playing an instrument. You're never too old to do it. And that while it takes a lot of practice by yourself and working by yourself, you're also, you benefit and you grow so much with a team. And that team, for me, is my orchestra.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing that was really enjoyable about reading the Late Starters Orchestra was the fact that you talk about the tremendous benefits, especially of playing music. Now, for instance, as you were alluding to earlier in the program, that generally when you pick up a stringed instrument, you want to do it by the age of 5, so you said. But and there's a real interesting thing that you bring up through psychology and science where you talk about brain development when it comes to that, and people who actually pursue music and the arts, at a young age. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, pursuing music has many benefits at any age. It's especially beneficial for a child because while the brain is developing, you're learning music. So the music becomes almost second nature, becomes part of the brain development. But even later in life, scientists say that there are many benefits. There are cognitive benefits, so that people who play music can process numbers more quickly. Scientists find they can find the right words. They can retrieve ideas in words more quickly. So there are cognitive benefits. There are emotional benefits to playing music. We all know how music can make us feel hopeful, make us feel happy, move us. There are physical benefits, the exercise that your fingers get, the dexterity, the fine motor skills that are used in music are all sort of reinforce those physical characteristics. And as you saw in Young at Heart and other movies, there are social benefits to making music. Yes, we practice alone and spend a lot of time working by ourselves, but you can go to classes, you can enjoy the camaraderie of an orchestra, and you can grow in just on all these different levels, cognitively, emotionally, physically, and socially. So, and all of these elements are necessary for healthy aging. The mind must be stimulated, the emotions have to be stimulated, the body has to be stimulated, and you need a social circle. And music is one of the best ways to provide that.
And you also think about the fact that you place something in front of you where you have something to look forward to. For instance, you're practicing, so you're putting in your due diligence, but now you're going to eventually come together with another group, of people. You're going to perform, so you have a performance to look forward to. And they say that, I think probably one of the most devastating things that has occurred was the industrial age when it comes to the human spirit, especially here in America. The idea that you're going to work, till the age of 65, then go ahead and go off somewhere and relax. Forget about it. You put your time in, but, when you take a look at the baby boomer, we come out of a generation that actually was more of a, we're not going to buy into that anymore. We're more sovereign, so to speak. And you actually talk about how there was a time, and you didn't understand why the human condition is this way, that we feel this urge and this need to hold on traditions, kind of those values that, were so important to us, we hold on to those without trying to change or become something other than. And the boomer kind of changed that. They said, well, wait a minute, that was fine then, but there's still this desire to be creative, to continue to evolve, to improve, to do something new. And that's what makes this so exciting to read, is it kind of starts to break down that old paradigm of, again, as I was mentioning earlier, that industrial-aged thinking, that, by this age, you're done. And the fact is, no, you're not. You're actually, in some ways, just beginning.
Yeah, well, in the book I write about the character and Fiddler on the Roof, Tevye, who's sort of caught between the old world and the new world. And for Tevye, the fiddler represents the music of the past, and the joy and the connection that provides. But yet his children are sort of propelling him into the future. And sometimes I feel like caught between the classical religion, classical music, and then everything that's moving forward in our society, the technological change, and just the way that we now listen to music. We listen to it on our iPods, and we listen to it by pressing a button. It's just so easy to hear the greatest music in the world, while you're walking down the street. And I embrace all the new technology, and as a journalist, we thrive on that. But I still believe there's a place for tradition and for classical music, and in my case, for traditional religion. So I don't know that the boomers have totally jettisoned it. We sort of live in between those worlds.
Mm-hmm. Very exciting times. I liked when you were talking about the people in your book who had actually gotten late starts in their life. And I was just thinking, because I just recently finished the biography on Freddie Mercury of Queen. And here was a group, most of them were in their late 20s before Queen ever came together. And to realize that that's all there is to it. You just step forward and just make it happen.
And there are examples in music. There are examples in other realms of life. Julia Child, didn't start cooking till she was 40. Grandma Moses didn't start painting till she was 70. The actor Danny Aiello got his first gig at 40. So that we look to to other late starters, to famous late starters. Golda Meir didn't become Prime Minister of Israel till she was 70. Mm-hmm. We all know Noah Webster for his dictionary, but he wrote that when he was 69 years old. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorites, Ben Franklin, was 78 when he created bifocals. So and we all benefit, especially today, us the baby boomers who are using the bifocals. But we also benefit just from the example of people who continue to be productive and creative, throughout their lives. And this, in many ways, can be our most productive time and most creative time.
Now, as you started in this direction with your life, how inspiring was your movement to other people?
You mean the networks that were created through music?
Well, not just that, but let's say, your son goes to see a performance and realizes there's Dad. He always talks about achieving goals, but he is doing something he loves to do, and I get to see that. I get to see the kind of fulfillment that it brings him. Could be friends or family members. This is what I'm talking about here, where they finally go, I couldn't believe it, but, you made me think about maybe it's time for me to go and start doing this for myself.
Mm-hmm. The drama that unfolds with our son, who is, when he starts cello, he's 6. The book takes place when he's around 11, and he is being trained as to play classical cello. He's playing in the Suzuki method of cello playing, and he joins a youth orchestra. But at a certain point, when he's out of middle school and in high school, he discovers the guitar and discovers the electric bass and discovers that he could play rock and roll really well. And my wife is more of the rocker, and I'm more of the classical musician. So when he goes off to high school and he puts down his cello and picks up the electric bass, and I come home at night, and instead of wanting to do duets with me, he's at the piano and the bass with my wife. I say something's wrong here. What happened to all my work? So that's sort of a little tense moment in the book where I wonder about my ability to hold on to him. But I soon discover that it's not about him playing one kind of music or another, but just about giving him the gift of music, giving him opportunities as a musician, and watching him thrive, and almost see no barriers between different kinds of music, the way that I do. I could say, oh, that's jazz, that's classical, that's rock. I mean, he's just nurtured on all those influences, and now that he's in college, he goes back and forth. He's in a rock band, and he's in an early music ensemble. Mm. So he's very, very, very versatile. So some of those differences that my wife and I played out are sort of resolved in his embrace of all different kinds of music.
Mm-hmm. Well, perhaps you should show him the performance of Metallica playing with the San Francisco Philharmonic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the fact is, we all get that chance to play. We all get that opportunity to shine in the sun, and it's unfortunate for those who watch that kind of go by thinking they just never got their shot. And it really doesn't matter how big or small the shot is. It's the fact that you get the opportunity to have that you, as in your case, you get the opportunity to be in an orchestra, to be able to actually perform, and that's a fulfillment of a dream. And our dreams are within reach, and I think that's what I'm trying to tell people. Even if you didn't get to do that in high school, or as a young adult, or earlier in your life, you can still try to seize those dreams. And while I write about music, this is really a book about recapturing your dreams, whether they're to learn language, or to learn how to cook, or how to garden, or how to to fly a plane. As I said before, we're living longer. We have more opportunities. We have still have the opportunity to embrace life and new things at this stage. Mm-hmm. Now, Ari, is there a website people can find out more about how to maybe get a hold of the Late Starters Orchestra? Of course. So you can just go to www.arigoldman.com. And the book is out. It came out in June, and it's available at bookstores and online and wherever good books are sold. Well, Ari, thank you so much for being out there in the world to inspire others to do the same, which is to achieve and to pursue their dreams, because, hey, that's what we're all in this for in the first place, right? Absolutely. Nice to talk to you. Thank you for joining us here on the program today. Thanks. We want to thank you, the listeners out there. We inspire you to get out there and to take that first step. It is a great read. Late Starters Orchestra is the name of the book. Ari Goldman, our guest today. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.